Welcome to the 7 Days Report. I'm your host, Vasilios Nikolaos Vitsalogiannis. We are here every weekend at 12 and 21 to bring you the latest headlines, in-depth analysis, and insightful commentary on the stories that matter most. Whether you're tuning in for a recap of the week or looking for a deeper understanding of global events, we've got you covered. Let's start with our first news. The Trump administration deported approximately a dozen Iranians on a flight Sunday, marking the first such action since widespread anti-government protests erupted in Iran earlier this month, a source familiar with the matter told CNN. The deportees, whose specific identities and legal statuses remain undisclosed, were removed under standard immigration enforcement procedures. This move comes as Iran grapples with unprecedented unrest, triggered by economic woes and demands for regime change. Protests, now in their fifth week, have led to an internet blackout and a violent crackdown by security forces. Human rights groups estimate thousands killed, with reports of mass executions looming. President Donald Trump has vocally supported the demonstrators, warning Tehran against further bloodshed. If Iran executes even one more protester, they will pay a heavy price, Trump stated last week during a White House address. He has kept military options open despite ongoing diplomatic overtures. We're talking to them, but don't test us, he added, echoing his administration's maximum pressure campaign on Iran's nuclear program. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre confirmed the deportation but offered no details, emphasizing it aligns with broader efforts to enforce U.S. press. Borders. This administration prioritizes American safety and stands with freedom fighters worldwide, she said. Immigration advocates decried the flight's timing. Deporting Iranians now risks their lives amid the crackdown, said Amnesty International's Middle East director. Legal experts note most deportees likely faced prior removal orders predating the protests. The action underscores Trump's hardline stance on Iran, revived since his 2025 inauguration. Analysts see it as signaling resolve without direct intervention. As protests rage, drawing global condemnation, the U.S. weighs sanctions and potential asylum expansions for Iranian dissidents. Iran's foreign ministry dismissed the deportations as U.S. meddling, vowing retaliation. With tensions peaking, eyes turn to Trump's next address. The European Union and India have announced a landmark trade agreement, concluding nearly 2 decades of intermittent negotiations and marking one of the most significant economic partnerships signed by either side in recent years. The deal, unveiled jointly by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, is designed to deepen strategic and commercial ties amid rising global uncertainty and strained relations with the United States. Talks for a comprehensive free trade agreement began in 2007, but were repeatedly stalled over disagreements on tariffs, market access, intellectual property rights, and labor standards. The renewed momentum reflects a shifting geopolitical landscape, with both Brussels and New Delhi seeking to diversify trade partners and reduce dependence on Washington amid disputes over industrial subsidies, digital taxation, and protectionist policies. Under the agreement, the EU and India will gradually eliminate or reduce tariffs on a wide range of goods, including automobiles, pharmaceuticals, machinery, textiles, and agricultural products. The pact also opens new opportunities in services, digital trade, and government procurement, while establishing rules on sustainability, climate commitments, and labor protections. European companies are expected to gain improved access to India's fast-growing consumer market, while Indian exporters will benefit from easier entry into the world's largest single market. Officials said the deal goes beyond trade, strengthening cooperation in technology, clean energy, supply chains, and critical raw materials. This agreement is about more than economics, von der Leyen said. It is about building resilient partnerships with like-minded democracies. Modi described the pact as a new chapter in EU-India relations that would boost investment, jobs, and innovation. Analysts note that the timing is significant. With transatlantic relations under strain over trade disputes and industrial policy, both the EU and India are positioning themselves as alternative centers of economic gravity. The agreement is expected to be formally signed later this year, pending ratification by the European Parliament and India's cabinet. If fully implemented, the pact could reshape trade flows between Europe and South Asia, reinforcing a strategic partnership in an increasingly fragmented global economy. Survivors of a devastating explosion and fire that claimed 5 lives at a biscuit factory, Violanta, in central Greece began testifying Tuesday before fire service officials, as investigators uncover early signs pointing to a gas leak as the likely trigger. The incident unfolded late last week at the facility in the industrial zone near Lamia, roughly 200 kilometers northwest of Athens. Eyewitnesses described a sudden, thunderous blast that ripped through the production hall, igniting a fierce fire that gutted the building. Among the dead were 5 workers, including 2 women in their 32nd and 3 men aged 25 to 45, all migrant laborers from neighboring Balkan countries. At least 12 others suffered burns, smoke inhalation, and shrapnel injuries. 3 remain hospitalized in critical condition. Tuesday's hearings at the Lamia Fire Department marked the first formal statements from 6 survivors who escaped the inferno. One worker, speaking anonymously, recounted hearing a hissing sound minutes before the explosion, followed by an acrid smell of gas. "We were mixing dough when the floor shook," he told reporters outside. Preliminary forensic analysis supports this. Traces of natural gas were detected in debris samples, with experts suggesting a faulty valve or undetected pipeline rupture sparked the ignition amid flammable flour dust. Fire Service Chief Dimitris Kostopoulos emphasized a meticulous probe into safety protocols at the factory, owned by a mid-sized Athens-based confectionery firm. Union leaders decried chronic underinvestment in industrial safety, noting Greece's history of similar accidents, including a 2023 warehouse fire that killed 4. Families of the victims gathered in Lamia, demanding swift justice and compensation. "No family should endure this," said the aunt of one deceased worker. Investigators expect full reports within weeks, amid calls for nationwide safety audits. As Greece grapples with industrial vulnerabilities, this tragedy underscores the urgent need for stricter regulations in food processing plants. The Greek football community is reeling from a devastating road accident in Romania that killed 7 PAOK supporters en route to a Europa League match against Lyon. Flags flew at half-mast outside PAOK's Toumba Stadium in Thessaloniki, where fans laid flowers, scarves, and candles in tribute. The minibus, carrying 10 fans from Alexandria in Emathia, crashed on the DN6E70 highway near Lugo Helul after clipping a tanker truck during an overtaking maneuver. The vehicle spun into oncoming traffic, colliding head-on with a heavy truck. 4 vehicles were involved in total. 6 victims died at the scene, with 1 more succumbing later. 3 survivors were hospitalized, 2 in critical condition amid severe weather that hampered rescue efforts. Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis expressed profound shock, offering condolences and coordinating aid via the Greek embassy. PAOK President Ivan Savvidis called it an unspeakable tragedy, while the club dispatched representatives to Romania. Rival fans from Olympiakos, Panathinaikos, and Aris joined in solidarity messages, highlighting rare unity in Greek soccer. In Thessaloniki, a woman who left white roses at Toumba said tearfully, "I grew up in this stadium," capturing the deep bond fans share with PAOK. As Greece mourns these young compatriots, the incident underscores the perils faced by passionate supporters traveling abroad. The outpouring reflects PAOK's role as a cultural icon in Macedonia, plunging the sporting world into shared sorrow ahead of the January 29 fixture. In a bold display of unity, French President Emmanuel Macron hosted Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen and Greenland's Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen at the Élysée Palace on January 28, 2026, urging Europe to confront a changing world order amid U.S. President Donald Trump's renewed interest in annexing Greenland. Macron described the dispute as a strategic wake-up call for all of Europe, calling for assertive European sovereignty, bolstered Arctic security, and countermeasures against foreign interference and disinformation. He spoke briefly in Greenlandic, affirming Greenland is not for sale nor up for grabs, and pledged France's unwavering support for Danish, Greenlandic territorial integrity. The leaders discussed bolstering Greenland's economic and social development, with Paris set to open a consulate in Nuuk by early February. EU Foreign Affairs Chief Kaja Kallas, speaking at a Brussels defense summit, warned that Trump's rhetoric shakes the transatlantic relationship at its core, pushing Europe toward greater self-reliance while valuing NATO ties. Danish PM Frederiksen stressed that recent events confirm the old world order no longer exists, advocating a more autonomous Europe in defense without abandoning alliances. Greenland's Nielsen framed the partnership as a defense of democratic values beyond the island's borders. Trump's claims highlight Greenland's strategic Arctic position, rich resources, and national security value for the U.S., fearing Russian or Chinese influence. Though Trump backed off immediate threats after NATO talks, the rift has chilled US-EU relations, prompting trade pushback and sovereignty reaffirmations. Macron's initiative signals Europe's pivot to proactive Arctic engagement amid climate and geopolitical shifts. This Paris meeting underscores a fracturing global dynamic, with middle powers vowing resilience. Costa Ricans head to the polls this Sunday amid mounting fears over drug trafficking and violence that have shattered the nation's reputation as a serene tourist paradise. Polls show Laura Fernandez, a 39-year-old political scientist and former presidential chief of staff, commanding a clear lead as the right-wing populist frontrunner. Fernandez's surge reflects deep voter frustration with rising crime. Once synonymous with ecotourism and pura vida bliss, Costa Rica now grapples with record homicides, over 900 last year, many linked to cocaine routes from South America. Gangs have turned idyllic beaches and rural roads into battlegrounds, prompting warnings from the US and Europe about tourism. "We've lost our peace," said Juan Morales, a 52-year-old shopkeeper in Le Mans, where shootouts have become routine. Holding a double-digit lead over rivals like center-left economist Rodrigo Munoz, Fernandez promises a hardline crackdown, stricter borders, military patrols, and anti-corruption purges. Her campaign taps into a broader rightward shift, extending the mandate of outgoing President Rodrigo Chavez, whose tough rhetoric resonated after decades of center-left rule. "The people want order, not excuses," Fernandez declared at a rally in Alajuela, drawing cheers from thousands weary of impunity. Critics warn her nationalism risks alienating investors and migrants, but polls from CID Gallup indicate 45% support, with turnout expected to be high. Leftist challengers decry her as divisive, yet the violence, up 20% in 2025, has eroded faith in traditional parties. As ballots are printed, analysts predict Fernandez's victory could reshape Central America, prioritizing security over Costa Rica's progressive image. Voters like Maria Lopez, a mother of 3 in San Jose, echo the sentiment, "Enough hiding behind rainforests, we need safety now." Ukraine experienced a relatively calm night following U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement that Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed to pause attacks on Kyiv and other towns during an extreme cold snap. The Kremlin confirmed receiving Trump's request but offered no details on the agreement's terms. During a White House cabinet meeting on the 29th of January 2026, Trump revealed he personally asked Putin to halt strikes for a week due to record-low temperatures, describing it as extraordinarily cold. Trump claimed Putin agreed, noting Ukrainian officials were very happy despite their struggles with power outages from prior attacks. The pause targets urban areas amid Ukraine's harsh winter, where strikes on energy infrastructure have left millions vulnerable. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov verified Trump's personal request to refrain from striking Kyiv until February 1, framing it as support for negotiations rather than weather concerns. Peskov avoided specifics, mentioning only Kyiv and not broader regions. This marks a potential diplomatic gesture in the nearly 4-year war. Ukrainian Air Force reported Russia launched an Iskander-M missile and 111 drones overnight into January 30, but defenses downed 80, with Kyiv spared major hits. No large-scale barrages hit the capital since January 23 to 24, aligning with the reported lull. President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned of potential massive strikes but welcomed pauses on energy attacks, pledging reciprocal steps. The deal comes as Ukraine braces for negative 30 degrees Celsius chills, exacerbating blackouts from Russia's winter campaign on power grids. Casualties from recent drone incursions include hits on a Kharkiv factory, but the night stayed quieter than usual. Analysts see it as a brief respite, with frontline drone activity persisting. That was the 7 Days Report show. I'm your host, Vasilios Nikolaos Vitsalogiannis. Before signing off, I would like to thank you for listening to our news. Until next time, stay informed and be safe. Goodbye.